everybody, and welcome to Knitting with Frogginette. I'm Lisa, and this is my knitting podcast. I'm a knitwear designer focusing on baby and children knitwear. I hope you're well. Happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful holiday and that it wasn't too stressful as it can be sometimes. I've been really busy since the last time I posted. I'm finally finding a few minutes to update you on all those holiday knits. I will get to the knitting part a bit later in the podcast, but first I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to during the holiday. So this Christmas was pretty special because it's the last Christmas that my family was going to spend at my grandparents' house. My grandparents passed away years ago, and up until now their house had been rented. And that's the house I grew up in. I spent all my summers there as a child, and that's a huge part of my inspiration as a designer. That's where my grandmother taught me how to knit, and it's just quite a special place for me. And the house will be sold later this month. We are selling it to a family friend, which is wonderful because it's someone who actually knew my grandmother and was good friends with her, and I know that she will restore the house and the garden to its former glory. It was a little bittersweet being there because, you know, of course, the pathway down the river is completely overgrown. The house, you know, I mean, it's the winter, so it's not at its best, of course, but the atmosphere was still there. It was really special to be there with my children as they were decorating the tree and opening their presents and being completely mesmerized by the fireplace. It really felt wonderful. So we drove a really long time from Germany to Normandy, which is where the house is located. The house is on the coastal region of Normandy, very close to the D-Day beaches. It was a treat to walking at low tide on those amazing beaches with this beautiful light and the kids running and looking for seashells. Of course, it wouldn't be a holiday without way too much food. You know, seafood, cheeses, too much champagne and wine. I'm basically stopping everything this month. It was really delicious. was very nice to return home as well and just sort of stay in and do all kinds of cozy activities, Scrabble, nice cooking. We stayed in for New Year's Eve and had the kids set the table nicely and cooked a nice dinner and actually went to bed early. My son made some progress on learning how to read in French. It's now his third language that he will be able to read in. He was very motivated by all the comics from my childhood that we found in my grandmother's house. He spent a lot of time looking at those. So I hope it sticks, and I hope that he can enjoy all these books in the same way I did when I was his age. Now let's talk about knitting. Next up is my Everest of sorts. It's a cardigan that I'm working on for my husband. The cardigan comes from a Rowan book called Pioneer. It's this book. And it's called Settler. Let me show you the pattern page. There it is. It's this one. So it's a cabled hoodie with sort of a quite easy textured cable pattern at the fronts and at the back. And I am very pleased to say that I am done knitting the back and the fronts. I finished knitting the fronts during the holiday, and let me show you what the back looks like. I'm very excited about it. We had a fitting for where I just pinned it together, and it seems like it's gonna fit him. So hopefully he will wear it. He did say the other day that it looked like intense, talking about the texture of it. So I hope that doesn't mean that it's too intense. I think it's textured, but it's relatively subtle, especially in this colorway. I'm crossing my fingers. I will finish it, of course. I'm crossing my fingers. I've been really enjoying the pattern. I haven't had to keep my eyes on the charts too much. It's relatively intuitive. I mean, I still have to look up and from my knitting and see where I am on the chart from time to time. But overall, it's pretty easy to half memorize. Now I still have to knit the sleeves and the hood, as well as the button bands. And then of course sew everything together and put buttons on, but that shouldn't take too long. I think the cabled parts were the most time-consuming and knitting intensive parts. So if you remember, I had been working on this cardigan for my son based on my veggie patch cardigan pattern, and it was languishing because it was lacking buttons, and I finally found the perfect buttons and finished it. He wore it for a little photo shoot that we did, and he seemed to want to keep wearing it for the rest of the day. So I'd say that's a win. Of course, now I'm thinking I should have done a bigger size because, of course, he would wear it longer. But overall, I think it'll be fine. Hopefully his sister will wear it at some point as well. My next finished object is a pair of slippers that I made from Faye Kennington's pattern, Mine. And everybody's been making these slippers. They're so fast and so easy to make. It's such a perfect, quick gift. And I just grabbed some yarn and some needles. I didn't really pay attention to gauge. I thought that they would fit someone. And they did. I came up with this smaller size, and they fit my son very well. That's the second thing that he claimed. And you know, I meant to make one pair for my dad, and I didn't get a chance, but I will get to it at some point. My next finished object is the, what's it called? The Spinning Top by Dani Sunshine, who is a great designer, who does a lot of kids stuff as well. And I made that hat for my daughter using this really nice mohair blend yarn that I bought a few years ago when I took a trip to Japan. The yarn is called Hobira Hobire, and it's Roving Ruru, Roving Ruru. And I will put all the details in the description below. The hat is knit from the top down, meaning from the top of the crown to the ribbing. And then I added a pom-pom, and I didn't do the stripes. I just used the yarn and wanted that to be the feature. And I made braids on the sides here. They're not super functional, like you couldn't really use them to tie the hat down because, so basically there's like a slit at the back of the ribbing, which is nice. I like that style on my daughter. And I made so the braids are more of a little cute detail. So I really enjoy knitting the pattern. I kind of messed up the cast on that she has you work in order to work from the top down. I think I must have messed up something, but everything was very well explained. It's not a problem with the pattern itself. My daughter wears it all the time. She's so excited by it. She just loved it. So I actually made myself a matching hat using the same pattern. Just using a different colorway of that Japanese yarn. I had bought 3 different colorways of the same yarn. And yeah, I just, this one I started knitting from the bottom up. So I started with the ribbing. I used an alternating cable cast on, which I love for ribbing. It looks a lot like the tubular cast on, but it's a lot easier to work. And then instead of doing increases, I did decreases all the way up. And I think it probably looks a little more invisible with the increase way. I mean, there's a reason why the designer has you doing it the way she does. But, you know, I just thought it was easier. I was basically being lazy. I was just being lazy, basically. For this one, I sewed up the slit and just to make it into a regular beanie. Slightly slouchy. So you can wear it with the full ribbing and a bit of a slouchy look, or you can fold the ribbing up and make it more of a fitted beanie. I made the same hat for my mother as well, and I wanted to take a 3-generation picture, but when we went to the beach, my daughter was very busy looking for seashells, and there was no way to get her to pose. My next finished object is a cowl, which I made for myself. There it is. I used my Crossroads patterns chart. Basically used the hat pattern, just made the ribbing longer and added more repeats of the pattern, the colorwork pattern, and then ended with some ribbing at the top. And that was it. I just wanted a quick and easy cowl that would be relatively fitted, because I don't like cowls that are too big and kind of let the cold air in. I mean, you can fold them over, I guess, which I do sometimes, but I kind of prefer them to be a little bit more fitted, especially if I'm gardening and I don't have time to readjust myself all the time. So for this project, I used one of my favorite yarns from a company called De Rerum Natura, which is a French company, and they make really beautiful yarn, and this one is Ulysse. So I definitely recommend this yarn especially for color work. It's just nice and soft and very, very lightweight, and it just works beautifully for color work. The next finished project that I made was for my niece, who is about 10 months old, I believe. She was there in Normandy. My brother and his family came from America and visited, so it was such a treat to spend some time with her. She's such a cute baby. So I made her this little tiered baby coat, which is one of my patterns. I'll put the link in the description below. And I lined it with Liberty fabric, which is the wonderfully silky, very high quality cotton that my grandmother used to sew with all the time. She was a very gifted seamstress, and she would make me dresses using this kind of fabric. And so it just seemed fitting for me to use this for her great grandchild. It's also a practical touch. I think it makes it easier to slip the coat on and off because it's so silky. I don't have a modeled photo, unfortunately, but I'm sure she'll look very, very cute wearing it. Now, for another project that you may remember that I was working on was a pair of shorts for my brother based on a West Knits pattern called Sports. And I finished it and I gave it to my brother, and he let me take a couple snapshots really quickly of him wearing it in the kitchen of my grandmother's house. And I think they fit pretty well. I don't think he's gonna wear them outside necessarily, but to lounge around in his house, I think they'll be just fine. So that wraps it up for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you the very, very best for 2020. And until next time, happy knitting!